The most decorated warship in American history was cut apart for scrap metal. It took 2 years to destroy it. By the time it was gone, the men who had sailed on it were still alive. The admiral who had commanded it tried to stop it from happening. Congress said yes to saving it, then refused to pay. And a nation that had just watched this ship hold the entire Pacific War together on its own could not raise $2 million to keep it. So the Big E went to a junkyard in New Jersey. And it has been gone for 65 years. The USS Enterprise, designated CV-6, was commissioned on May 12, 1938, at Newport News, Virginia. It cost $25 million to build. It was 810 feet long and displaced 19,900 tons. It could carry up to 90 aircraft and reach 32 knots at full speed. It was one of 3 American aircraft carriers commissioned before World War II started. The other 2 would both be sunk before the war was over. Enterprise was the one that survived. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, Enterprise was at sea, returning from a transport mission to Wake Island. 18 of its aircraft arrived over Pearl Harbor during the attack. 7 were shot down. 8 airmen were killed. Enterprise was the only American carrier with men in the air at Pearl Harbor during the attack, and the first carrier to take casualties in the Pacific War. 3 days later, its aircraft found Japanese submarine I-70 and sent it to the bottom. Enterprise became the first American ship to sink a Japanese warship after the war began. It had been in the fight for 72 hours. What followed was 4 years that changed the world. Enterprise fought at Midway in June 1942, where its dive bombers sank the Japanese carriers Kaga and Akagi. 4 Japanese carriers went down in that battle. The Japanese lost 272 aircraft. The battle turned the Pacific War in America's favor in a single day, and Enterprise was at the center of it. Then it went to Guadalcanal. It was hit by bombs in August. It was hit again in October. 44 men were killed in that second attack. 75 more were wounded. The forward elevator was jammed. Repair crews were still welding it back together as the ship sailed back into action. On October 26, 1942, the carrier Hornet was sunk at the Battle of Santa Cruz. When it went down, Enterprise became the only operational American aircraft carrier left in the entire Pacific Ocean. The crew hung a sign in the hangar deck. It read, "Enterprise versus Japan." That was not bravado. That was the actual situation. One ship against the full weight of Japan's naval air force in the most important ocean in the war. This is the part that stopped me when I was researching this. Enterprise fought alone like that for 40 days. Damaged, still being repaired while at sea, it launched aircraft against Japanese forces trying to retake Guadalcanal. It helped sink 16 Japanese ships in 5 days during the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal in November 1942. Sailors were living on a ship with welders working around them day and night because there was simply no time to stop and fix it properly. They had to keep going, because if Enterprise went down, there was nothing left. The Japanese announced Enterprise had been sunk 3 separate times during the war. They were wrong all 3 times. That is how it earned its second nickname, the Gray Ghost. By the end of the war, Enterprise had fought in more major actions against Japan than any other American ship. It earned 20 battle stars, the most of any warship in World War II. It received the Presidential Unit Citation, the Navy Unit Commendation, and the British Admiralty Pennant, an unofficial token of respect from the Royal Navy that was almost never given to foreign ships. It had shot down around 911 enemy aircraft and helped sink or damage over 260 ships. It had been hit by bombs and kamikazes multiple times, and it had kept fighting every single time. Then the war ended, and the Navy decided it did not need Enterprise anymore, with 24 newer and larger carriers commissioned by the end of 1945. Enterprise was surplus. It entered the New York Naval Shipyard on January 18, 1946, for deactivation. It was officially decommissioned on February 17, 1947. It was 9 years old. The ship sat in storage while the Navy decided what to do with it. In 1946, there was a plan to donate Enterprise to the state of New York as a permanent memorial. That plan collapsed in 1949. Then, San Francisco proposed keeping it at Treasure Island Naval Air Station. That plan went nowhere. The ship kept sitting, rusting, waiting. In 1954, a group of former Enterprise crew members formed the USS Enterprise CV-6 Association and started trying to save it. In 1956, Admiral William Halsey, the most famous American naval commander of the Pacific War, threw his full weight behind the effort. Halsey had led Enterprise through some of its greatest battles. He helped push a resolution through Congress to establish the Big E as a national memorial in Washington, D.C. Congress passed it, but Congress would not pay for it. The association was given 6 months to raise $2 million to move and preserve the ship. 6 months. For a country that had just spent hundreds of billions fighting a world war, $2 million to save the ship that had done more than any other to win that war was apparently too much to ask. The fundraising effort fell short. The association recognized it could not be done in the time allowed. An agreement was reached with the Navy. The association would stop fighting, and in return, the Navy would name the next nuclear-powered carrier Enterprise. That carrier, CVN-65, was commissioned in 1961. On July 1, 1958, the USS Enterprise CV-6 was sold to the Lipset Corporation of New York City for scrapping at Kearny, New Jersey. It took 2 years to cut it apart. The scrapping was complete by May 1960. A promise was made to save Enterprise's distinctive tripod mast and install it at the Naval Academy's football stadium. That promise was not kept. A memorial plaque was put at the base of a tower instead. The tower is still called Enterprise Tower. What remains today is scattered and small. The ship's bell sits at the US Naval Academy, where it is rung only when the midshipmen beat West Point in a game. One of its anchors and its commissioning plaque are at the Washington Navy Yard. A 16-foot, 1-ton nameplate from the stern sat next to a Little League baseball park in River Vale, New Jersey, for decades, because that was the best anyone could do. In 1964, a television producer named Gene Roddenberry was developing a science fiction show about a spaceship that traveled the galaxy. He had originally planned to call the ship the Yorktown. Then he changed his mind. He named it the Enterprise. When he explained why, he said he was particularly fascinated by the CV-6 war record and had always considered it a heroic ship. His show became Star Trek. The name Enterprise became one of the most recognized names in the world. The man who created the most famous fictional spaceship in history felt that name was only worthy because of one real ship. The ship itself was already gone by then. Sold, scrapped, melted down. A bell in a trophy case. A nameplate next to a baseball field. A tower with somebody else's plaque on it. The scrapping of Enterprise is now widely recognized as one of the worst decisions in American military history. In the years after it was gone, the country preserved 4 Essex-class carriers and a Midway-class carrier as museum ships. Those ships are still floating today. Visitors walk their decks every weekend. The Enterprise, which outfought all of them, which built the record all of them were measured against, does not exist anymore. The failure to save it changed how America thought about preserving warships. It became the lesson, the cautionary example. Every museum carrier that exists today exists in part because people looked at what happened to Enterprise and decided they would not let it happen again. It was already too late for the Big E. 20 battle stars. The only ship to fight alone against an empire and keep the war from being lost. The gray ghost that Japan could not kill. Cut apart in New Jersey while the men who sailed on it were still going to reunions, still trying to save it, still calling themselves Enterprise men. They ran out of time. 6 months and $2 million. That was the